The Women's Six Nations kicks off this weekend. England will be looking to put their disappointment of losing the Rugby World Cup behind them. France should be their nearest challenger. In terms of the rest, then it's going to be pretty close. Any of the other four can finish probably anywhere from third to sixth in the table. The first game up on Saturday is Wales versus Ireland. It's a 2:15 GMT kickoff in Cardiff's Arms Park in Cardiff. Let's have a quick look at the teams. So Wales team there is Kite, Newman, Jones, Lake, Williams, Morris, Snowsill, Bevan, Piers, Jones, Tuipulotu, Fleming, Crabbe, Evans, Callender and Lewis. And then on the bench they have Evans, Thomas, Hale, Williams, Harries, Lewis, George and Bluck. For Ireland then, team is Deely, Doyle, Dalton, Breen, Behan, Cronin, Scuffle, McCabe, McGrath, Jones, Jugang, Friday, Monaghan, Wall, O'Leary, Hogan, Nickerbaird, O'Dowd, Haney, Brown, Moore, O'Connor, O'Brien and Irwin are on the bench. Okay, so this one is 9th in the world versus 8th in the world, so very close, and Wales actually have the upper hand in recent meetings between these teams. Wales, they made the quarterfinal of the Rugby World Cup. They lost heavily to New Zealand, but they did have some very good performances up to then. At the start of 2022, they actually started for the first time giving professional contracts to their players, and they're really reaping the benefit of that at the moment. Last year they finished third and they had 2 wins, and they also beat Ireland 27-19 in the RDS. That was a bonus point win. Ireland were winning that game with about 15 minutes to go, but Wales scored three tries to seal the victory for them. In terms of then their team for this time, Kate Williams is set to make her debut for them, and yeah, they'll be looking to get off to a good start. In terms of Ireland, as said, they're ranked 8th in the world at the minute. They didn't qualify for the Rugby World Cup. There was a combination of their finishing position in the Six Nations last year, and also in the qualifying competition they lost to both Scotland and Italy, and they were actually really poor in that tournament overall. And one thing, like, people praise the IRFU, to the high heavens about how well the men's game was run in the country, etc. For the women's game, absolute opposite. They've just kind of gone from disaster to disaster with this team, and really badly handled things. Like, for when we hosted the Rugby World Cup a few years ago, they gave some contracts out to players, and we ended up doing really badly in our home World Cup. Then, like, those contracts went away, and things really were, just going from bad to worse, to the point where 56 current and former players wrote a letter to the Minister for Sport, basically pointing out the failures of the RFFU in terms of the women's game, and asking for some kind of change to that. In the wake of that, there have been changes. There's a new coach now, Greg Williams. He took the team to Japan for 2 games, which they won the first one quite easily, and then lost the second one. But there was a lot of kind of, good team building and rebuilding bridges there as well. But there still are worries around the team, like the fallout from the letters. The letter saw former captain Claudia Maloney actually being frozen out from the team, as well, like the professional contracts that they have offered recently. Like, a lot of the players who are playing in England saying that it's not enough money to live on, and that they're not going to take up the contracts. They're going to keep playing where they are instead. So there's still a lot to be sorted out on that front. But also in terms of this year, The sevens players won't be involved, so there's going to be no Parsons or Murphy Crowe for the team. So they're going to have to adapt to that, because generally the seven players have provided a lot of the strike power in the backs for the team. Last year they finished fourth with 2 wins, so the same amount of wins as Wales, who finished third. Sive McGrath and Niamh O'Dowd are set to make their debuts in this game as well. And Greg Williams has been talking about, the lack of the 7 players, but the fact that this will be a good test of where the team are. The next game then is England versus Scotland. It's a 4:45 p.m. GMT kickoff. It's at Kingston Park in Newcastle. Let's have a quick look at the team. So England are Dow, Breach, Tuma, Reid, MacDonald, Atchison, Lucy Packer, Carson, Cockayne, Byrne, Aldcroft, Cleal, Cabea, Marley Packer, and Sarah Hunter. So they're actually co-captains for this game. Replacements then are Davis, Craig, Clifford, O'Donnell, Beckett, Warwas, Hurd, and Singh. And then the Scotland team is Rowley, Grant, Orr, Smith, McGee, Nelson, Pattinson, Bartlett, Skeldon, Belisle, O'Donnell, Macmillan, Malcolm, McLaughlin, Gallagher, Renty, Young, Clark, Donaldson, Sinclair, MacDonald, Blacklock, and Musgrove finished at 23. So this is basically England first rank in the world, despite losing that Rugby World Cup final to second rank New Zealand against 10th ranked Scotland. And there's a big gulf between these teams. But honestly, there's a big gulf between England and pretty much all the teams in this tournament. England has said beaten World Cup finalists last year, really close to actually, doing what everyone thought they were going to do. Everyone thought that they were definitely going to lift the Rugby World Cup, but it wasn't to be for them. Bit of heartbreak for that. Last year they were Grand Slam champions. They win a lot of Grand Slams in this Women's Six Nations. Also last year it was Scotland 5, England 57. There were 9 tries, including a hat-trick by Marley Packer. Sarah Hunter has announced she will retire immediately after this game. It's the reason why she has been named as co-captain. She talked about how she wanted to retire after the Rugby World Cup final, but because they didn't win, she didn't want to go out on such a sad note. So instead, she decided that she would play this game. It's in Newcastle, which is her hometown as well, and she's going to retire after that. Great servant to England, and also just fantastic ambassador for the women's game as well. Mackenzie Carson, who is a former Canada international. She's a prop. She's going to make her debut. She's qualified through her mother, and it's basically one of these ones where as long as you're stood down for long enough, you can switch nations. In terms of Scotland then, they didn't get out of their pool last year at the Rugby World Cup, but they ran both Wales and Australia close in that pool. They were 6th last year with no wins, but they had, a few close runs, so don't expect them to, automatically be getting the wooden spoon this year. As I said, it's very competitive between the bottom 4 really in this competition. Francesca McGee is set to make her debut in this one, and Corinne Grant is getting her first start as well. But it's a tough ask for them against this fantastic England side. for most of the teams other than France, it's going to be just a case of trying to keep the score down, if you're being realistic about it. The final game then on Sunday is Italy versus France. So this one is, hang on, let me get I don't have the time written down of the game. It is a 3 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. It's at the Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi, that's where Zebre play their Pro 14 games, or they're playing at home. Let's have a quick look. Well, not at the teams. We can look at one team, but Italy, they haven't, at least now when I'm recording this, they haven't named their team yet, but have named a 26-woman squad for the fixture. So the squad that their 23 is going to come from is Baratin, Bossato, Capamaggi, Saval, Dinka, Duca, Federighi, Franco, Guy, Giordano, Giroli, Lacatelli, Madia, Maris, Muso, Ostuni, Rigoni, Say, Scorbini, Silari, Stecca, Stefan, Stavanin, Tunesi, Tirani, and Beccini. So the 23 are going to come out of those 26. France's team then is Boulard, Banet, Manager, Venier, Boujard, Arbez, Bourdon, Deschet, Sochat, Calafoy, Falou, Forlani, Bertomu, Escudero, and Gross. And on the replacements they have Domain, Lindelof, Bernadou, Picou, Hermé, Chambon, Tremolure, and Dupuy. So this one is ranked 5th in the world versus 3rd in the world, but there is a big gap. There's a big gap between the top two and France, but there's like a big gap between France and pretty much everyone else as well. So last year, Italy in the Rugby World Cup, they lost to this French team in the quarterfinal, but they did have a very impressive pool victory over the USA. They were 5th last year with 2 wins, and last year's score was 39-6 to France. Yeah, Italy, they're basically going to be looking to build on what was a fantastic Six Nations and Rugby World Cup for them, and repeating that finish last year for them, with the 2 wins, and maybe getting up to 3rd place is probably their goal for this year. For France then, in the Rugby World Cup, they lost by 1 point in the semi-final to eventual winners New Zealand. They finished 3rd overall. They thumped Canada in the 3rd place playoff. Last year they were 2nd. They had 4 wins. That 1 loss to England. It was 24-12 in that. So they ran in close for some of the game, but then England were just too good for them in the end. And basically, yeah, they're the only team likely to challenge England for the title this year. But even they're going to have to be at their best to give them a game when they meet in the final round. Okay, so that is our look at the fixtures. I will have reports on the games as well over the weekend, and then we'll do some more news on the Women's Six Nations next week as well.